Howdy and welcome to another edition of On the Road with Larry Dixon. Today we're heading to the Old Pogue Distillery and Capronies on the River in Maysville, Kentucky. The Old Pogue Distillery is our first stop, and then it's Capronies restaurant for some fine Kentucky eating. The parking lot's gravel and small, so I suggest walking shoes, no stilettos here. If you do decide to visit, then reservations are required for the tour and the tasting. We howdied some nice folks finishing their tour, and from the smile on their face, they had a good time. Well, it's time to head to the Visitor Center. The Visitor Center has an amazing and commanding view of the Ohio River. In 1876, the original Pogue Distillery, Kentucky registered number 3. We're going to learn about that in a few minutes, so let's step inside and see what's going on inside the Visitor Center. Well, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to let you listen to the expert.
But my grandfather went to Covington, Kentucky and bought another distillery. And they had one customer, and it was a huge distillery, and they made rum. That's all they made, and they had one customer, Lucky Strike Tobacco. And they used the tobacco, the rum to flavor cigarettes with. And they made a lot of rum. More alcohol sold during Prohibition than before or after. So it never quit, but we couldn't sell. But he had all the he was a pharmacist and also an attorney. And so he had warehouse receipts because he said he was going to use it to make medicinal purposes. And he made it medicinal purposes, but he made a lot. We had, I don't know, Dan can tell you 50,000 barrels of bourbon down here, and he came and picked it up and took it back, and he had everybody paid off from the local people here, and he took it to Ohio and had them paid off all the way to the President of the United States. He had paid off. And there's a book called King of the Bootleggers. It's a good read. So, but he would come down here and give warehouse receipts, and we sold our bourbon out. So, okay, and advertising statement. Right? Yeah. If you look at this sometime really close, we used to use that for advertising, but there's some things on there that we can't use today. It's just not politically correct. Kentucky bourbon is less than 1% of the brown spirits in the world. So we got a lot of growth. Scotch is the king. Theirs is about 60% of brown spirits is Scotch. This is the original house. Right here is a picture of the original house. And gravity played a really huge part. The front porch slid off down the hill. And this is what a picture of it, and this is what it looks like today. So a fellow by the name of Phil Breen, he worked for Procter & Gamble. He was in charge of sales and retired and restored this house, and everything here is original. That's the original rick houses that were here. That was all torn down in 74, 75 right here.
Okay.
And my great-grandfather was in the steel business in Asheville.
Okay.
And this thing came up for sale, so he just came up the river and bought this and started distilling in 1876. And it stayed in the family.
And this is H.E. Pogue?
H.E. Pogue the first.
Got it.
So we were one of the first craft distilleries, or maybe one of them. And then so if you are on the same premise, under the same name, and the same location, you can get your original distillery permit back.
Wow.
Called Distillery Spirits Permit. And ours is number 3. Wow. We wanted to name this birthplace, Maysville, the birthplace of bourbon.
Right.
So, because right down here at Limestone Landing was the first, it was the first port after you left Pennsylvania. It was right here. And there was 3,000 small, they weren't distilleries, in this whole region in Bourbon County. And what you did as a farmer, you took your corn to the mill. You with me?
Yes.
The guy at the mill, he would grind it and give you back the corn that you took in minus probably 5% or something for the grinding fee.
Sure.
And so at the end of the year, he had a lot of corn. And so instead of shipping the corn down the Ohio River, he made alcohol, put it in barrels. And at that time, the barrels they would come down the Ohio River and they had fish and pickles and stuff like that in them. So they took a fire and charred the barrels to get that smell out. And then they would put the alcohol in the barrel, put them on flatboats and go all the way to New Orleans, Bourbon Street. And by the time it got there, 6 months, they said, this stuff tastes pretty good. Send us some more bourbon from Kentucky. And it just developed over that kind of history. So that's, all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
Bourbon, we use corn, rye, malt, and barley. And we'll cook that mixture, and it basically breaks down into sugar. And then we add yeast to it.
We get our barrels from Independence State, and we have a number 4 char, which is pretty much a dark char. And John will tell you that the flavor doesn't come from here or the Nashville, it comes right from the barrel. Before Prohibition, all the income in the United States was from taxes, from alcohol and tobacco basically. And then during Prohibition, the government had no income, so that's when the property tax started. And it's still here.
You can start coming up, getting glasses. Please just one at a time, unless you're taking it to somebody special. Your tasting, excuse me, is the Old Pogue Master Select Bourbon. This is why they got back into business. It is a 9-year-old, 91 proof bourbon, 70% corn, 20% rye grain, 10% malted barley. Your second tasting will be our rye whiskey. This is a single grain. It is 100% malted rye. It's 7 years old. And it's also what's known as bottled in bond. And part of that is that it's bottled at 100 proof. Our next single barrel is Old Mason County. This is a 4-grain bourbon. Okay, malting process is they allow grain to, they moisten it, and then it starts to sprout, and then they dry it, and then it's processed.
Right, exactly.
And I don't blame them, I mean, if they think they can get it, try to get it.
But then again, I guess some of that's on the railroad easement too, right?
Well, we finished our tour and tasting at the Old Pogue, and now it is time to head to Capronies on the River for some fine dining, Kentucky style. Capronies began as a Maysville dining tradition in the 1930s as a sandwich shop for railroad workers. Then in 1945, Lea Caproni, along with his brother Alfred and his sister-in-law Lea Or Lay-a Caproni, purchased and operated the restaurant for many years. It's located beside the Amtrak railroad station and along the CSX tracks. Our food has just been delivered and we ordered salad, family style, lasagna, beef liver, pork chops, shrimp and grits, shrimp platter, and of course dessert. Don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and feel free to share. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of On the Road with Larry Dixon. See you soon.